Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining this webinar. This is the very first webinar in the Africa MBA Alumni Insight series we have this week. Today, we will be focusing on tech and e-commerce careers, and I'm joined by 3 of our esteemed alumni from the program who will be sharing from their experiences, and they will be more than happy to answer your questions. I'll just introduce myself. My name is Elena Irimia, and I'm one of the senior advisors for the Oxford MBA at Said Business School. And I'm joined also by my colleague Stephanie, who's in the background. She will just be helping me with the Q&A box today. So any questions that you have, please put them in the Q&A box. Please don't use the chat function just so we can get to your questions. And if possible, please, I would also like to ask you to keep your questions quite general so we can answer as many as possible. And our alumni will shortly share from their experiences. I'll just wait maybe 1-2 more minutes just so we can grow the participants number, and then we will make a start. Okay, I think we might be ready to go. So I'll just make a slow start. And I'll start with asking our alumni to just introduce themselves, mention which MBA class they have graduated from, and what they were doing previously before the MBA, and what they are doing now post-MBA. And may I just start with Chima, maybe? Would you like to start?
Yeah, of course. Hi, everyone. I'm Chima. I was on the 2021-22 class. Before the MBA, my most recent job was at M-Copper, where I was a strategy and operations manager. M-Copper is a large fintech company in East Africa, West Africa, and recently South Africa. And then after the MBA, I moved on to Google, where I'm a strategic projects lead on the strategic projects and business planning team in EMEA. So great to be here.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Onome, would you like to introduce yourself as well?
Yes, of course. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon or good morning, wherever you're joining from. My name is Onome Ofoman. I was in the MBA class. I graduated in 2019. And before the MBA, my background is in software engineering. I had my bachelor's in electrical engineering, worked at Google and Goldman Sachs as a software engineer. And then after the MBA, I moved back to Lagos, Nigeria from the US, where I was working before. I still stayed in tech, but pivoted to doing more engineering management rather than software engineering. And as at 7 months ago, I've pivoted again from tech to working in nonprofits in environmental conservation. Happy to be here. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I'm sure we will have some questions around your career, just because you obviously are no longer in tech, but I'm sure you can speak from your experience and on how your professional journey has been so far. Dami, would you like to also introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. I'm Dami Bolaji. I currently work as a product manager, managing expansion of products across Europe in Amazon. Before the MBA, I worked across several businesses ranging from food production to consulting for large products in Nigeria mainly. And I graduated in the year 2020. So it's good to be here.
Thank you so much. And also because you come from different MBA cohorts, I would also like to ask you maybe to share one highlight or something that's really memorable for you from your experience. I know everyone has a very different experience, and especially because you come from different cohorts, I'm sure you might have a particular moment that really, really stood with you, and you now think about it, with great pleasure. Maybe Onome, would you like to, if you have one in mind, would you like to share anything with us?
I do. I mean, the one that comes to mind is related to like something I value a lot, which is playing sports. So as part of the MBA program, you could participate in the MBATs, which is the MBA tournament. So it's like a mini Olympic for a lot of the schools that offer MBAs in Europe. And so our cohort was really well organized. We had captains for every different sport in the MBATs, and I captained both the track and the cross country teams. And first of all, Oxford has won in the past couple of years, and we won in our year. But I think the cross country and the track team, we spent a lot of time the winter leading up, just practicing together, getting to know each other better. And then we spent this fantastic weekend in France, in Paris, all together, competing, getting to know each other better. And that was definitely one of my highlights. I have other highlights, but that one comes to mind.
Perfect. And can I just ask how, because we discussed that topic of the MBATs a lot with our prospective applicants, and it's just something that we are very proud of. Like you said, Oxford has won for the past few years, and the MBATs is one of maybe the few experiences where you get to speak to fellow MBA colleagues from other business schools in Europe. So I'm wondering how that experience was for you, and I'm sure you might have some people that you are still in touch with from that moment.
Sure. I mean, so the MBAT when you arrive, so it's hosted by, I think it was HEC in Paris, in Fontainebleau. Okay.
Yeah.
So they hosted on their lovely campus, and then because it's sort of team sports, you are competing against other schools. And for me, sports has always been a great way to connect with people, whether it was other MBAs at Oxford, but when you're in this crowd situation, right, you have this really great sport to connect on. There were also, apart from just the sports, there were social events throughout the day. So even if you're not playing a sport, right, there were spectators who were there cheering on others. So that was a great way to meet with other people from other schools. There were parties in the evening. And if you don't also play sports, there was also a band competition, right? If you're musical, if you sing, if you play an instrument. So I would say there is something for everyone, and there were many opportunities to meet with different people from other schools. I still keep in touch with, there was someone from HEC that I met and that moved to Nigeria also around the same time I was moving back to Lagos. And so we kept in touch, helped each other through the process of reintegrating back in Lagos. So that was really cool.
Thank you. Chima, would you like to share a highlight with us from your experience?
Yeah, happy to. I think mine was the whole college experience, right? And meeting people even beyond the MBA class that were in other colleges and programs, right? Apart from the business school, is meeting people, talking to them about their own courses, their own experiences. It really opens your mind, to different parts of the school and what's happening in other areas. So just that being able to go back to your college, maybe every week or every day if you wanted, to meet people and chat to people about different things and different areas really helps, open my mind to several things. I think that whole college experience, meeting people from diverse backgrounds, I think was my highlight.
Perfect. Dami, would you also like to share your highlight with us?
Yeah, sure. I'd say, unfortunately, the most memorable thing was COVID for us because the pandemic hit, in Hillary, and it was memorable because, quite clearly, it's something that's never happened, in centuries, and also navigating, recruitment specifically in that landscape where a lot of, typical paths like, internships certainly got cancelled, especially in, Europe, in London in particular. So that was, quite the curveball, but also just, leaning on, both the alums and as well as, current students and, trying to figure it out. That was the most memorable thing for me.
Thank you. I can see some questions are coming up in the Q&A box, so thank you so much for sending those. And I'll just start with a couple of them. And first one would be, how hard it is to get into tech? Do I have to apply at the start of the MBA for jobs? I think this is a really interesting one that you can all answer from your own perspective. So can I just start with you, Dami, and your opinion on that?
Yeah, sure. It's a good question. I'd say it unfortunately depends, right? Depends on you, depends on your background, what you've done before. But absolutely does not hurt to, to start to recruit early. You would get experience, with interviews. You'd get the opportunity to also tweak your, your resume or, improve your stories, or even pick up a skill or two, right? I didn't have to, but I took the elective in Trinity, the big tech one, and I had to learn Python for the class, right? And I managed that, even though I didn't have any significant coding experience, right? But I'd say that now when you fast forward a couple of years, everyone's talking about AI now, big data, machine learning. That's all the rave now. So it doesn't help, right? Right, it doesn't hurt to boost your curiosity, but in terms of actually getting the job, I mean, you can get an offer at any time during the program, right? The earlier the better for your own peace of mind. But always good to be early. And I reckon, I don't know if that's still going on now, but Amazon in particular typically has a couple of structured hiring paths that start in my year. It was in October, November, both the sessions on campus and the interviews and stuff. So it's always good to get in there as early as possible and try for the best.
Yeah, so it was shortly after you started, actually. If that was back in October, November, it was only a month or two after you actually started the program. So we can say that's quite early on.
Yeah.
And I think this is the trend with other careers as well, perhaps even consulting. They tend to recruit their talent quite early on. And so I think that's certainly early, but like you said, you have to do a few things, and as early as possible would be great. Chima, would you like to answer that one as well?
Yeah, I think hard. I would say it's hard, right? I'll just say like know what you want to do in tech, right? So tech is big, right? You can be technical or non-technical, right? So I'm non-technical, right? And I'm in strategy. So I said, so what do I need to do to get me prepared for a career in a non-technical role in tech, right? So there are things like improving my problem-solving skills, improving my project management skills, improving my data skills, right? So it's like, what do I need to do, right, to improve on those and then bridge those gaps to get me ready when I want to start to apply. And then there were several things during the MBA that I could leverage on, right? For example, we had a whole course on on Wall Street prep on how to, use Excel better formulas. There was a problem solving courses that we had through the consulting track. So just leveraging the right things to bridge the gaps to get you to where you want to get to, I think. So that's the key thing.
Thank you. Actually, just on Friday, we had a student panel for our interview day, and one of our current students also mentioned the Wall Street prep and how useful it has been for him, especially because he also didn't come from a technical background, and he highly recommended it. So it's good to hear that it was useful for you as well.
Yeah.
Onome, would you also like to answer the question around how difficult it is to get into tech, and if you had to prepare early on to start applying for jobs at the start of the program?
Sure. Yeah, I think what both Shima and Dami said is really important, right? Things start pretty quickly, with the September, October recruiting timelines for some companies. So I guess it really depends on how much you know that you want to go into tech before the program starts. Because I would say if you know for sure you want to go into tech, you kind of have to start preparing a little bit earlier before the program starts, so that you're ready to dive into applying and recruiting in October.
Yeah.
On the other hand, I took the MBA a little bit differently. I wanted to take some time just to explore different fields, so I did not start recruiting early.
Yeah.
And so that's also a viable path if you just want to take your time to, take a few classes the first term in Michaelmas, maybe, half of the term in Hillary. But in Hillary, there were still some positions open. If you take that strategy, you do need to do a bit more digging on your own. There are a lot of startups that were hiring in Hillary and in Trinity in the London area. So I would say there are still opportunities, even if you choose not to recruit in the very beginning of the program. But you just have to be a bit more focused in going out to look for those opportunities for yourself. There are a lot of conferences that happen in London around tech. So there are always opportunities to meet people, even outside of Oxford, who can help you get jobs.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that. And I would say, as a follow-up question to the one that you've just answered, someone from the audience is asking, how helpful were the career development team events in assisting your transition to the tech sector? And I would say maybe both events and just the career development center in general. And if you've had received help from them, that would be really useful to know. Maybe Chima, would you like to answer this one?
Yeah, of course. So I think the first thing is setting your expectations, right? People come into the program thinking that the career team would give you a job, right? So the career team will not give you a job, right? So, but it will help you to get that job. So setting expectation from the start, and okay, so what do I need from the careers team, or how can I leverage on them, right? So it's things like share your CV very early on with the team, right? Having them go through it, review it. I say this every time. The career team was very, very helpful to me. So even as little as looking at my CV and telling me, okay, so you put this, so put the results first before everything else. So the results, so the what, the why, and the how, right? Just that, those little tweaks, right, really, really helped. Secondly, it was also interview preps, so just preparing for interviews, asking you tough questions, going through your story, making sure it's coherent. So all of those are super, super helpful. So I say it's two things: set your expectations and then decide early on and on what they can do for you, and then leverage them from the very start. I think those are the key things for me.
Perfect. Thank you. Dami, would you also like to answer this one?
Yeah, sure. So Dito, pretty much everything Chima said. I just like to add that, there's a significant benefit in having someone who doesn't have your professional context, right? In looking at your CV, someone can literally read your document and say, "This doesn't mean anything to me." As an outsider, how can you refine some of these narratives? I think some of the useful, experience, especially when you're changing geographies, right? So if someone picked up your CV, say in Nairobi, and you have experience across maybe Joburg or Lagos, they probably, have some idea of what the markets are like. But when you cross in geography, it's not so apparent to someone really what some of these geographical markets mean, and you could get that benefit from interacting with the careers team. But in addition to Wall Street Prep, we had a SQL session in my year where it was just some gentleman coming over to take us through some of the core stuff in SQL. There was a product management. It was like a little workshop slash competition, which I also partook in, at the time. So yeah, like you have to be open. You have to be willing to do the work, right? And you have to also be willing to ask for help, right? Or also just apply yourself to whatever feedback you get. But there's a lot of benefit you can, and also even networking, right? So they can support you with, finding people in some certain companies, right? But you can also do that yourself. So yeah, that's just my contribution to that.
Sure, thank you. Onome, any ideas from you?
Yeah, I mean, I think the only thing I would add is, in addition to everything, they are also just a good sounding board, especially if you find someone on the careers team who understands your background a little bit. And a lot of people on the careers team, at least in my year, were very knowledgeable about the tech industry. So if you're looking to do anything that's slightly unconventional, it might not fit in within what the Career Center already has available, but they're always available for you to talk to, for you to get advice from, as Dami said, showing you or pointing out other networking opportunities that you might not have thought of or that they might not offer just generally. So even if they might not seem helpful based on what they are putting out to the student body, it is always helpful to at least go take a session with someone, talk through your own personal situation, and then they can always help.
Absolutely, thank you. There is a question on self-employment and how much the MBA prepares you for starting and running a business. I would say, and I would encourage you to attend our webinar on Wednesday, which is focused on entrepreneurship. So I'm sure the alumni that will join that session will be maybe in the best position to advise. So yeah, the webinar on Wednesday will be focused on entrepreneurship and how to start a business and all the useful information about that. There is a question from someone from the audience, again, based on your experience, do big tech companies consider the MBA program at Saïd Business School a target for their structured hiring in London? If you have experience with that, would anyone like to answer this one?
I can start.
Yeah.
So the answer, I believe, is yes. At least at the time when I was, in the MBA program, like I said, there were two parts, for hiring in the structured, a program for Amazon, which was one was the Pathways, which was more operations focused, and the second was what is it called now? I forget the name, but that the second one was more corporate because Pathways is the operations one. The second one is called the launch program, right? So both, were quite targeted. They would actually come over to Oxford to, have sessions, but also conduct the interviews, especially for Pathways. They did the interviews on site, and then you pretty much knew if you got the offer within by the next year. So there were 2 rounds of interviews, and the people interviewing were right there in Oxford, and you could do also the coffee chats and stuff. So I do have, while I didn't get in at that, through that program, a number of my classmates, did. And that's all I can say about that. But regardless of whether you get into the structured path or not, nothing stops you from reaching out to an SBS or an alum, right, who works in the companies that you want to work with, and getting a referral or talking to them and having them put you through interview prep. I had alums support me with that, referrals, and just even getting an idea of what the roles may mean, because sometimes it's not very apparent. There was one platform, I don't remember what it's called, but it was I think it was on your Oscar one, where you could book one-to-one sessions with, I think they're like coaches also. I know I had a couple of interactions with an alum who worked at Amazon at the time, when I was, that was like, I think Hillary term or maybe even Trinity, right? And I got to talk to him about what career progression and some other stuff were like. But I don't think, I mean, I won't speak for all the tech companies, but I don't know that some of the other ones have such a structured ones, like, well, program like Amazon. But even if there's no structured hiring, right, there are people who went to Oxford who work in these companies. That's your structured hiring. Sometimes, you can just reach out to them and, try to get in that way. Thanks.
That's very useful. Thank you. Chima or Onome, any additional comments that you would like to add here or anything?
No, I think she's covered everything already.
Perfect. So there is a great question from the audience around the course content. So perhaps you would like to talk about how you customize the MBA to help achieve your career goals. If you perhaps took any tech-specific electives, or if you prefer to keep the MBA quite general. How has your experience been like with the course content and the electives that you decided to go for? Onome, maybe would you like to answer this one?
Yes, of course. So I think this is one of those questions where, of course, it depends on what your actual goals are. My goals coming in was to just be more of a generalist because my background was in software engineering.
Yeah.
So I wanted to pivot from software engineering focus to more kind of management, but also I wanted to pivot from working in the US to working back home in Nigeria.
Yeah.
And so my course selections were based on this idea of going to more of a generalist and then moving back home. So I took a course on running businesses in Africa. I took the entrepreneurship course, and I took just the general business courses as well. I took a course on strategy. And I think one of the courses that I didn't appreciate it too much at the time. I enjoyed it a lot. So that was a negotiations course. It turned out to be probably the best course I could have taken. I had a lot of fun during the course itself, but it was helpful to have a background in negotiations to negotiate a job offer, even to start. But then also a lot of the work that I ended up doing. So working as an engineering manager in Microsoft just requires interfacing with different people who have different goals. And so having a course that really just kind of breaks down, okay, this is how you get to a reasonable solution that works for all the parties involved was very helpful. Like I had to interact with people in human resources. I had to interact with my own line managers. I had to interact with recruiters to recruit for my team. To get engineers on my team. So all of these different groups have their own different interests. And so having a course that really helped me understand, okay, this is how you form relationships in order to work for a greater good was actually really, really quite helpful. So I wouldn't recommend that to everyone. I think negotiations is important to just be a human being. So that would be my number one recommendation.
It seems to be a very popular subject. A lot of our current students and alumni speak about negotiations very highly. So it's good to hear that you also had a good experience and you really enjoyed the subject. Dami, would you like to answer this question as well?
Yes, sure. I think I touched upon mine a couple, through my, discussions earlier, but yeah, so I knew from the jump that I wanted to, work in big tech after the MBA, and very much like on the man, I was trying to, navigate a change in, the market that I was working because I was coming from, working in Nigeria. So I was trying to do three actually. I was trying to change function, change sector, and also change, industry all at the same time. So yeah, so I thought I found the analytics course, which was compulsory anyways, quite useful. Well, I didn't like it then, but when I started working and fighting with data every day, I thought, oh yeah, this is what he was talking about back then. I strategy was great as well, especially when you're a non-technical person in the tech company. Negotiations, like she said, really in big tech, stakeholder management is like, I don't know, 60% of your job. And that was useful. But in my case, I did, like I said, I took the big data one, which just helped me, forcing myself to learn Python was, in 1 week, was quite harrowing. Uh, but I thought it was very useful in, and I could use that also in my stories, right? When you ask me, if I was curious, I'll tell you, I procrastinated and then had to learn Python in 1 week before the start of a course. And, that also exposed me to are they called MFEs, the other master students in the school who tended to be, a bit more technical. So, we had groups we worked in and, they were like, wizards with some of the stuff that some of the MBA struggled with. So I thought that was quite useful as well. And then yeah, I said those were the main ones. Then the extracurriculars, like we said, the tech OBN, the product management courses, or we had a trek just before we went into lockdown, where we went to Meta's office, went to a couple of, it was a product management trek in tech, and, just participating in that, you get to network with people as well, and, exchange contacts, and, just being, some of it was quite strange as well. One, we went to, I think Shell they have like a mini tech innovation hub, which we went to. Another one was a finance, institution that traded commodities, right? So understanding what product management would be like there. So yeah, like I mean, as much as you can, you want to be open to other possibilities as well. I also was heavy in the consulting track, but honestly, I'd say that uh, you know try and get as much from it as possible, right? It would help, right? Consulting helps a lot with tech, because I think some Chima mentioned problem solving. That's one of the things you practice when you're when you're trying to recruit for consulting, and that also helps you when you're trying to answer questions and stuff. So I will stop there, but yeah, I did tailor mine to tech, and I found it very helpful.
Perfect, thank you. Chima, would you also like to add anything about your experience with the course content, and perhaps any particular subjects that are tech focused and that you took during your MBA year that you really enjoyed?
Yeah, I think the core courses were fantastic. I think it was the ones I really, in the core course, I think it was the technology and operations course that was really good. That was really good because it go deeply into like operations management, as it relates to tech as well. So that was really great. And in terms of the electives and customizing, I think the project management one was really, really good because majority of the work that we do in tech is project based, right? So you have to really know how to manage projects that have multiple stakeholders, shifting timelines, budget, all of that. So to know how to manage all those different moving pieces and parts was really, really helpful. And the course was also had a bit of strategic lens or input to it as well, right? So just merging both really gives you like an in-depth view on how to like manage really complex projects that have a strategic element to it as well. So I think that was a good one. And then the strategy and innovation elective, that was really great as well. Just those two I recommend.
Perfect, thank you very much. There is another great question from the audience, and they are asking what particularly caught your attention about the program, especially considering your intention to specialize in tech post MBA. So how did you end up doing the Oxford MBA over all the other programs that are available? What in particular draw your attention to our MBA? Would anyone like to start?
Happy to.
Please.
So for me, it was in my previous job at the fintech company, right? So the CEO went to Oxford. A couple of the people on the C level, the COO as well, and CC also went to Oxford, and then this was a tech company. And speaking to them about the experiences at Said was super helpful, right? Learning from what worked, what they liked the best about it or the most about it, and just hearing how their experiences during the MBA shaped their careers post MBA, and also speaking to other people who were in the program at the time just gave me a real insight to how the school was actually really focused or would help to shape you up for a career in tech. So I think those are the main things for me, right? Speaking to people that I knew and those that I didn't know that were on the program at the time just gave me an insight into how the business school is structured to help people who want to either accelerate or pursue a career in tech. And also attending programs like these, right? I think I joined like a few back then. Super insightful, and those just really, really helped me to like make a decision, really.
Thank you. Onome, anything from you?
Sure. For me, it was two things. So the focus on Africa was very compelling to me. I think the Oxford MBA, like Said specifically, focuses on recruiting students from Africa in a way that not other business schools that I looked at does. And because I had this goal to move back to Nigeria, it was very compelling, to be in a school where I'd be surrounded by other Africans and get to learn from them, understand a bit more how the country had shifted in the time that I was away, and just kind of form connections that I wouldn't have gotten to form perhaps in other business schools. The second one, a little unrelated to this panel, but I was really compelled by the work that Said does on impact, like social impact. And so one of the things at the very beginning, you get a chance to join one of two labs. I think there's a finance lab and there's an impact lab. So these labs are, they're kind of like a condensed version of a course, but it spans almost 2 terms. So I did the social impact lab. And so every week you'd meet for 2 to 3 hours. You'd have someone working in social impact come to meet with this group of students, talk about what they do. And then there's usually Q&As and some kind of workshop afterwards. And it was just very, very interesting that a business school was focused on not just kind of the bottom line, which is usually dollars, dollars and cents, but also the human impact of the work that you do. And so having that connection was really important for me because I was just kind of questioning a lot about how capitalism runs. Anyway, I don't want to go into all of that, but I think for me, the MBA had very compelling themes, and that was why I chose Said.
That's a great answer. Thank you. Dami, what's your perspective and why did you choose to come for the Oxford MBA out of all the programs, considering the career that you were looking to achieve after graduation?
Yeah, it's a good one. I mean, ditto to what both of them said, but in my specific case, I didn't want to go to school in London, so the business school in London was out of it. But I also had, quite my CEO at the time connected me to one of her friends who had been in I think 2 or 3 classes, before us, and I had discussion with him, about how he navigated his change because he also moved. He moved geography, job function, and location all at the same time. And, that it was a quite, useful discussion. And, I thought, the support that he got, right, was significant. And to be honest, he's been very supportive even when I was in the MBA. We continue to have discussions about career, and even till now, right, I still talk to him now because he lives in London. So and I think secondary was the community, right? So I thought, well, if I'm going to move halfway across the world to go to school, might want to do in the class or in the school that had quite a relatively higher number of Africans, people with, quite similar, not just background, but also similar challenges, right? Compared to some of the other students. And, that was also another driver for me to come to Oxford. So, yeah.
Thank you. There is a question on the recruitment process in tech and what kind of advice would you offer to any incoming MBA students about tech recruitment, especially during periods of layoffs and low hiring? Any tips or any advice that you would like to give to our incoming MBA students or anyone that's interested to pursue a career in tech post MBA?
I was going to say Chima should start, but I think I think I can start because the first couple of months after the pandemic, the aftermath of the pandemic was a bit tedious recruitment wise, right? The folks who had been lucky to get offers from tech, in 2019. December, November, they were the lucky ones, right? Because come March, internships got canceled and everything, was crazy. I'd say right now, I mean, we all know the market is not a fun one. My recommendation would be, start early, network as much as you can, right? And be be resilient, right? Nobody's going to open the door for you. You probably have to force some doors open yourself. And just keep going, because really, to be honest, it's not even, I mean, at our levels 2, 3, 4 above us, it's not really within our control, who, how many people can get hired. Some of these decisions, are made at a very macro level, especially in big tech. But you just have to keep going and continue to adapt, right? It doesn't sound like much, but get referrals and connect with people as much as you can in those companies, and just keep fighting. That's it.
Thank you. Any comments from
I
you,
would
Chima? Or
jump in as well. I think,
Yeah.
I mean, Dami is spot on. The landscape has changed a lot in the past 3 years, just in terms of recruiting. I led a team of engineers, and I mean, every few months, just layoffs happen. And I think that's kind of the new normal, which is a bit unfortunate. So it's all that to say it's really tough. One of the things I would say maybe is just kind of to hedge on that, because I know a lot of people want big tech, but there are still jobs out there in non-big tech, right? So startups are growing, and startups are a really, really great place to start your career, just because you get to do a lot really quickly and you get to learn and grow really fast. So maybe don't focus just on big tech, because big tech has their challenges as well now. Widen, open up your mind to other tech companies.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah,
Please.
plus one to what both have said, right? Because when I was looking for a job, I wasn't just focused on big tech. Then you like how difficult it was to get in. So I'd say spread your tent as wide as possible. Because you don't get a job in a big tech company now doesn't mean you want to get it in, 2 years or 3 years. But the things that I said earlier still apply, right? So know what your current gaps are, start filling them, know what skills you need to get and get them. Because now like it's more important, like even like now more than ever, right? To really be strong and like make sure that you meet at least 90% of what the minimum requirements for whatever job you're applying for, big tech or small tech. And also leverage LinkedIn a lot, right? I think that was really helpful for me, right? So reach out to people, right? Send them a polite message, asking for a coffee chat to talk about their roles, right? That would really help you to understand what they do and how you fit into that. And maybe whenever like a role comes up in their companies, they will possibly reach out to you to let you know, right? So those things help. I think that's really it.
Thank you. There is a question that seems to be addressed maybe more to Dami, because she is working for Amazon, but I think you can all answer, of course, based on your experience working or having worked for Google and Microsoft. The question is, what are the most difficult parts of applying for a job in tech companies like Amazon? Do you need to do an interview? Do you need to do a presentation? What kind of things they ask for, and do they look at elements like GMAT, for example, or anything in particular that they pay close attention to? And I think, Dami, I can start with you.
Yeah, it's a good question. So the caveat is that big tech is really big, right? There are typically multiple organizations. Think of it as an amalgamation of like tons of big companies, right? So the experience can be quite varied, right, from one corner to the other. That being said, right, keeping it at the generalist level, as far as I know, GMAT is not a requirement for working at Amazon. As far as I know, there is a sort of test that you take regardless of what you scored in your GMAT, right? So there's a bit of a that sort of like standardizes for the I'd say problem solving, constraints there. So GMAT number doesn't really matter so much. I say the typical standard process is, as outside of structured hiring would be, see a job, either get a referral. So, if you get a referral, you get an email, and then you follow that link to, send in the application. And afterwards, and it's not long, there's no cover letters, at least in Amazon or anything like that. It's just your CV. And then afterwards you typically have like a recruiter call if if you're selected in the first round, and then the recruiter call would, if successful, you move to like a call with the hiring manager. And after that, I think depending on the role, so again, if it's a technical role, they would have like the coding test, or all the other stuff, or whatever technical functionality they want to check, they typically would check at that point, right? So even the written test you would do after, if the hiring manager is fine. And in some cases, you might, because Amazon likes to write documents, so I think, if I remember correctly, I had to do like an exercise where I wrote a document. I don't remember, but I think so. Yeah. So in some cases, you might do that, or whatever they'll check there, and then if successful, you would do like a final round. So it's usually, depending on the level, it would typically be like 6 interviews in maybe one day, right? Which is like 45 to an hour. And then when you just, go through all of that, you would it'll be like a yes or no offer after a couple of days. And then that's pretty much it. But typically what happens is the recruiters they serve as a hand holder, right? So before the call or each stage of interviews, right, they would let you know what's coming and what the focus of the interview be, especially in the long day one where you're wondering, what am I going to be talking to 6 people, about? Yeah, so they would let you know, and even with the leadership principles which get tested, you can ask them, and typically they will tell you which ones they're testing for, and that's it. But honestly, and I'll let the others chime in for other ones, but the crucial thing is, to get that match with, the hiring manager, because that's the person you most likely be working with, right? So, having a good CV helps, right? That, is data, is concise, has a lot of data, because, Amazon loves to have data in everything, right? So your CV, should be very, very concise, and, should portray your strengths. That would typically, get you into the, pool if there's a match. And then from then on, it's a question of refining your stories and, presenting your case or your experience in a, in a good light. But yeah, the CV I think is the biggest first step, and or getting a referral as well. But yeah, that's it.
Thank you. These are some really great tips. Chima, maybe you would be able to speak from your experience at getting a job at Google.
Yeah, I think just echoing what Damia said, I think the most difficult part to answer that part of the question is getting shortlisted, right? Because obviously thousands apply and only about 10 sometimes make it to interview stage, right? So your CV has to stand out. It has to be very clear. I always recommend one page, no matter how many years you've worked for, summarize it and just show like the key things that you've done. Again, show the results and then everything else afterwards. Then the second most difficult part, I think, is your story, right? So telling your story properly. Most people underestimate how difficult it is to tell your own story. I know you've done the work, but telling it in a structured way is very difficult. So again, at Said, we're taught like the whole on the careers team, thanks to them, the style framework, right? So the situation, task, the action, the results, and the lessons, right? So answering every question in that way already sets you apart, because few people actually answer questions in that format. And the final thing I'll say is structured thinking. And this is why I was very heavy on case preps, even though I wasn't applying to consulting, right? So being able to answer questions in a structured approach, right? So understand the question, ask clarifying questions, structure your solutions, and then walk the interviewer through, okay, so which one will I prioritize? What would I test? And then how would I know if what I've suggested is actually even working? So like that structured thinking is very, very important. Some companies ask you to do a case, Facebook will ask you to do a case, and it's the same principle that applies, structured thinking, and how to structure your thoughts and approach. Google doesn't ask you to do a case, but they ask you like case-like type questions at one stage of the process. So just double down on improving your structured thinking. I think that will really set you apart as well. Yeah.
Thank you so much for that. Onome, any tips from you as having worked for Microsoft?
Yeah, just quickly, I guess based on my own experience, I did engineering manager interviews, and similar to what everybody else said, for the 6, interviews, half of them were focused on software, like coding, and then the other half were focused on like product management,
Mhm.
leadership, and like building a team. So I guess it really depends on what exactly you're recruiting for. About the sort of getting shortlisted, I'm of two minds on, what a good approach there is. I have always had a lot of luck just kind of reaching out to people directly, whether it's on LinkedIn or through referrals. I have found in my own experience that that's sort of where to focus your energy. Especially if you're trying direct applications and that isn't going too well. So definitely focus on putting yourself out there as much as you can. That works mostly well, especially for small tech. I think big tech is still focused on a recruitment process, but if you're, sort of open to non-big tech companies, you would go really, really far by like attending conferences, meeting with people. Honestly, I met a lot of like startup CEOs just like at conferences. One of the things I did a lot was I would just, take half of a day, like a Friday, and just go to London, attend a conference. Usually there'll be startup CEOs like that speak at these conferences. And so one of the ways you can stand out is just like, attend their session, ask a question during their session, and then go talk to them afterwards. And then, get their email them directly, and, you have a very simple interview, and all of a sudden you have a job offer. So there are many ways to get to the same outcome. It just depends on what your goals are.
Thank you. Thank you so much. That was really useful. And as we're coming to the end of this session almost, I just wanted to ask all of you to maybe give your own recommendation or advice to our audience today who are maybe looking to apply for the program. Is there anything that you would like to mention that perhaps you didn't know at the time when you applied, and that you wish you knew, and that you would give as an advice to anyone from the audience today? Anything that in particular that you think might be useful for them, as some of them might consider applying for the incoming cohort, which is the one that will start next year in 2025. Any ideas?
I can start.
Yes, please.
I think, you're definitely ahead of the curve. One of the things I realized during the program was how quickly the time goes. So almost looking at the year before the MBA as preparation would be very important. So using this time to really hone in on what you're looking to do afterwards, maybe try some different experiments, start talking to people now, so that way you can hit the ground running once you get to the MBA. I would say that's probably a very good approach. And even if you don't do that, if you decide to use the MBA as a year of learning, which is what I did, I guess my only advice there would be to be completely fine with doing that and be open to not really kind of having a job at the end, but knowing that you still have the opportunity to find a job even afterwards. Like the Career Center is always open to you. The alumni are always open to you. There might be, other considerations like visas. So, don't take my word for it, or don't take this as advice. But if you really want something by the end, I think you kind of have to prepare a few months or the year leading up. But if you want to take the year as a year to explore, that's also completely fine. That's what I did.
Thank you. That's great advice. Anything from Dami or Chima?
I could go after. Yeah, I'd say, Onome is spot on. Like she said, if you want to have an offer during or at the end of the program, just do the work. Do the work before apply yourself, and really take time to get into what is gonna take you. It's like you're trying to build a house. What do I need? Right, your requirements. Just spend that time, and again, you're already like quite early, so start getting into it as soon as possible. And I think One other thing is, two other things. One, the year really goes by very quickly, especially because the schedule is packed. Day to day, there's like 1 million things to do. You don't realize, how time flies very quickly in that sense. And then the other thing I would say is networking, right? So networking would, like she said, will open, doors for you that you probably didn't even know would exist. And you need to be, you need to be serious about it. When you want something, right, you would go after it. I think Chima and I were talking yesterday about how I was on LinkedIn like 24/7 during the pandemic. I was practically harassing people in a nice way. But to be honest, right, you'd be surprised. Like sometimes I would message people and the people you expect to respond are not the ones who respond. Very senior people sometimes are like, yeah, let's get on a call. I had connections at Meta from people I wouldn't have known, if I didn't, get on LinkedIn to talk to them, right? And I did that a lot. Netflix, I was on Twitter, I was looking for people, like, I was hunting them down. So you really need to, you need to just do, you're the one who's looking for stuff. And I'd say another thing I always tell people who I meet is don't neglect the alums of the school that you get in contact with before the program, right? One of the things that helped me, I know one of Chima's colleagues, right, who was in the year before me, and I spoke to Onometu even before I went for the MBA, right? The summer before, I spoke to the alums, and I kept in touch during the program, right? Just if a touch point here and there as I went through it. It really helped. In sometimes they would offer, to connect me to some of their classmates. Getting the job that I have now was because one of Onome's classmates gave my CV, to the hiring manager, and I was shortlisted. For the interview. I still didn't work with him directly, but another hiring manager picked me through that path. So, people will help you, right? And they want to help you, but you need to also, be ready to, work on the relationships. Don't discard them, right? And also just, be tenacious while you're going after it. So yeah, that's my piece.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
That's really useful. Chima, please, any ideas from you?
Yeah, real quick. I think two things. Know your why. So, because that will determine things you do before the program, right? So, if it's a job search, if it's to get a better job, or if it's to progress your career in a particular field or a new area. So, know the why, and then so that would help you to decide on type of things you want to do. And if you just like a career break and you want to just study and expand your mind, and obviously you know things to do. And secondly, is to just connect with people, right? Like Dami has said, and Onome has said as well. Speak to people, ask questions about the program, attend events like these. You learn so much. You know the type of things that you should focus on depending on what you want to do. I think those two things are really important, I'd say.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that. And we are now at the end of this session, unfortunately. Thank you so much for answering all the questions, and thank you for sharing your insights. I really appreciate you taking some time out of your day to share your ideas with us. Thank you to the audience for asking the questions. If we haven't got the chance to answer some of your questions, please feel free to email us on the Oxford MBA inbox. We will be more than happy to answer any questions there. Again, thank you so much, everyone, for attending. And like I said in the beginning of this session, we have 3 upcoming webinars this week. So if you are interested in learning more on entrepreneurship and finance and consulting from our MBA alumni from the African continent, feel free to register for those sessions. You'll find them on our website. Thank you so much, everyone, and hope you have a great rest of your day, and hope to see many of you join our next sessions this week. Thank you.